So good afternoon, everybody. I think there are still a couple of people popping into the meeting. Very welcome to the third conversation on agroecology. My name is Taru Sandén, and I'm pleased to moderate this conversation together with my colleague Karin Nistle. We both come from the Austrian Agency for Health and Food Safety. We now have these monthly conversations to dig deeper into the topic of agroecology. Today, we will focus on the role of research infrastructures for agroecology. So you will get to know what research infrastructures are and how they can benefit the agroecological transition. The Agroecology Partnership itself stands for Accelerating Farming Systems Transition, Agroecology Living Labs, and Research Infrastructures. This is a European research and innovation effort between the Commission and 26 member states, associated countries, and third countries. Together we are 70 partners, so quite a big group of people working towards agroecological transition. These conversations are there to strengthen the agricultural knowledge and innovation system, the so-called AKIS, for the agroecological transition. And we want to do this by facilitating possibilities for actors in living labs and research infrastructures to discuss, to exchange ideas, and find new ideas and new ways how we can move forward. These conversations will take place monthly, except the summer months, throughout the whole 7 years of the partnership. And they will thereby enable mobilization and networking of agroecology actors across and maybe even beyond Europe once we are moving towards 2030. Today, we have two speakers with us. We have Säde Virkki from Luke, Finland, and we have Michael Myrtel from Germany and Austria. And they will introduce you to the theme of research infrastructures and how these are embedded in agroecology and what they actually can do for agroecology. We will first listen to the talks. They will both have 10 minutes, whereafter you will have 5 minutes for questions. And then the last half an hour is dedicated for the discussion. You can raise your hand and ask questions, or you just simply write your comment in the chat. As you have probably all noticed when you came in, it says that the meeting is recorded. This is done so that we can also share this resource on the Agroecology YouTube channel. So if you disagree with that, please do let Karin know immediately, because we want to make these conversations available for everybody, and thereby they can also be found on the Agroecology YouTube channel later on. And to go through the speakers once more, our first speaker today will be Säde Virkki from Luke, the Natural Resources Institute, Finland, and she's also representing the partnership. Our second speaker will be Michael Myrtel from UFZ Helmholtz Center for Environmental Research and the Environment Agency Austria, and he's also representing a research infrastructure, 𝐸-ILTER. So we hope you will take home quite a lot of information about the research infrastructures in Europe. And now, without further ado, I would like to give the word to Säde. So Säde, please go ahead.
Thank you, Taru. I will share my screen. Now it should be on presentation mode. Yes, thank you for this opportunity to come to this organized conversation about the agroecology and tell you about the research infrastructures and how they can help facilitate the agroecological transition. My name is Säde Virkki, and I'm working at the Natural Resource Institute Finland as principal specialist, and my expertise is in development of national resource infrastructures and their international cooperation. I would like to start my presentation by giving you definition of what is meant by resource infrastructures and what 𝐸𝐸𝐺s are. I will also introduce you to the topic of the services provided by resource infrastructures, giving an example of ongoing AgroServe projects funded by Horizon Europe, which has brought together European resource infrastructures and 𝐸𝐸𝐺s to provide the services for users. In addition, at the end, I will present a potential perspective of where resource infrastructure services and resources can play a role in facilitating the agroecological transition. So, what are the resource infrastructures? You can start thinking about the core of knowledge, triangle of research, education, and innovation. ARIs are at this triangle core in providing resources and services for the research communities to conduct research and foster innovation in their fields. ARIs promote and facilitate international scientific cooperation and at the regional, national, European, and global level. Open access to knowledge-related facilities of research infrastructures will increase the creative and efficiency of research and bridge the gap between highly developed and lesser developed regions. Some research infrastructures has been established as European Research Infrastructure Consortium, 𝐸𝐸𝐺s. At the moment is established 23 𝐸𝐸𝐺s. The Council of the European Union has produced a council regulation of the community legal framework for 𝐸𝐸𝐺s. The primary mission of 𝐸𝐸𝐺s should be to be established and operate research infrastructure free from economic interest, ensuring that the resources is dedicated in their main task of promoting innovation as well as supporting the transfer of knowledge and technology. The establishment of resource infrastructures in the form of 𝐸𝐸𝐺s does not include other legal forms of resource infrastructures that services the interests of the pan-European research community. These alternate structures can also be recognized for their contributions to advancing European research and supporting the implementation of the roadmap developed by the European Strategic Forum of Research Infrastructures, called 𝐸𝐹RI. This 𝐸𝐹RI is a strategic instrument to develop the scientific integration of Europe and to strengthen its international outreach. The European Commission and 𝐸𝐹RI encourage member states and associated countries to develop national roadmaps for research infrastructures. These roadmaps are important blueprints that enable countries to set national priorities to earmark funds for both national and pan-European ARIs, including those listed in the 𝐸𝐹RI roadmap. In the latest 𝐸𝐹RI roadmap updated 2021, there were 26 national roadmaps for member states and associated countries that were available and active. Horizon Europe Research Infrastructure Programme overall objective is to empower Europe through the world-class and accessible research infrastructures as part of an integrated European research and technology infrastructure landscape. EU framework programs have so far fostered the opening the EU level of ARIs to transnational use and enable all researchers in Europe and beyond to have access to the best ARIs they need for their research. If we come back to the topic of research infrastructure provision, I would like to highlight the ongoing Horizon Europe project AgroServe. This is the project that serves a good example of facilitating access to research infrastructures at the EU level for transnational users by providing a catalogue of services. It brings together an overview of the possibilities for accessing services that users can apply from through the AgroServe Access Program. AgroServe has successfully brought together 11 European research infrastructures and ERICs to collaboratively offer their services and research in support sustainable agroecological transition. AgroServe promotes the cross-fertilization of knowledge across different fields, including agricultural science, natural science, biological science, ecology, forestry, fisheries, and agronomy. Through this interdisciplinary collaboration, the project aims to foster innovation and drive progress in sustainable agricultural practices. But if we now return to definition, what are the research infrastructures? At the beginning of the presentation, I talked about the core of knowledge triangle, the research, education, and innovation. Research infrastructures are at this triangle core of research, education, and innovation, and they're promoting and exploiting of knowledge and technology. By integrating these concepts into the agroecological transition, the placement of the research infrastructure is at the core of the co-creation of knowledge. More specifically, research infrastructure provide access to a wide range of resources, including example training programs, expert support, analytical services, computing resources, softwares, datasets, sample preparation and the setup of experiments, among others, to conduct research and foster innovation in agroecology. In the agroecology partnership, we are working to identify and engage relevant national and European research infrastructures that can provide resources and services related to agroecology. Additionally, existing regional and national research infrastructures are important as they contain local knowledge and community. Our objective within this agroecology partnership is to enhance open access to these resources, thereby promoting open science and driving innovation in the field of the agroecology. So this was the far what I wanted to say, so thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Säde, for the insights into research infrastructures. Do we have some questions for Säde from the audience? So please feel free just to raise your hand or write your question into the chat. Both ways are fine. While you are thinking for your questions, I would like to have one. You were talking about the training programs, and I wanted to ask if there already something available for agroecology.
For my part, about thinking about the research infrastructure, they can provide services as a training programs, but those what are correlating for the program directly the agroecology, I think that this kind of training can be coming from this AgroServe project, but from the infrastructures directly, I don't know. I need to say it that way.
Okay, thank you. Ivana Trukulja, do you have a question? Sorry for not pronouncing your last name very well.
Good afternoon, everybody. Taru, I think you have pronounced it very well. Thank you very much for the welcome, and thank you, Säde, for presentation. I have put in the chat a little greeting. Sorry for being a few minutes late. I work with AKIS, located at Aarhus University in Denmark, and we are partner also in agroecology partnership, working on science policy related aspects. So my question is, in this context, I think it was very valuable to hear about research infrastructures part in the agroecology transition. What is your view, or maybe in relation to the presentation, how the science policy advice can actually be, so the relation from the scientific evidence from these research infrastructures could support actually certain policy transitions? Is there interest for this area in your work as well? Because we are quite preoccupied, so maybe if you have already explored it in some manner. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer this about thinking about the European research infrastructures. So those are always like a more thematic, and also when they are contributing for the research, they having the knowledge, they also promoting the policy making for giving the lesson learned knowledge for the policymakers. But still, I don't know, do you want to answer about the agroecology directly, the policy, but in the research infrastructure, they have the thematic for their STEM's objectives?
I think that we've a little bit identified that there is this, there is a mechanism that scientific evidences are sent to policymakers, and then it can be policy briefs or workshops. But then the uptake of this knowledge is sometimes maybe more difficult. So we are concerned that actually the connection and agroecology transition is a very innovation intensive area. We are trying to see if there are any best practices where this had actually worked very well, not just as yes, we've received this evidence, but has reached certain policy making changes. So that is maybe the nucleus of our interest, or if you have any experience with it.
Yeah, well, I need to say that I don't have the experience from the research infrastructure side, but I know that the research infrastructure promotes the policy briefs, and they having the experience in the 𝐸𝐸𝐺.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
thank you.
Of course,
thank you very much. It's really good area that we will explore further. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivana. And I think we can later on take this question also up with Michael. Before we go further, there was also a question from Carl Rickards in the chat. We would still take this before we go forward.
So,
Carl, would you like to share your question?
Yes. So, look, very interesting talk. I suppose, what do you see as the biggest challenges or opportunities for the research infrastructures to support the agroecology program, and particularly around the challenges maybe?
Well, the challenges probably are that we still have these thematic research infrastructures already, and they have their own science fields and researchers and knowledge on it. So which these are correlating for the agroecology, or do they serve like agroecology services? So this is the user side, that we can find the users and correct infrastructures that wanted to make a cooperation, and that the research infrastructure promotes and provide these kind of services what the user needs. So this is the main challenge in the agroecology.
And the existing research infrastructures out there, like are they broad enough to encompass the entire agroecological area, or are they more likely to be narrowly focused? Like in Ireland, one of our infrastructures is what we call our signpost farms, and it's primarily focused around climate action and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There are some secondary objectives, but it wouldn't be as broad as the full definition of agroecology. So, are there limitations in the existing infrastructures?
So I still think that there are no limits to using for the research infrastructure resources and services. It's just how users in the agroecology researchers can see that how they can use these services, and how they can using on them research of these services. So it's more important to understand what the research infrastructure, what are these services, and how they can use it and access on it, so they can use it. So still thinking that there's are the thematic research infrastructures. So there's a lot of information that can be used again. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, without further ado, we can move into one particular research infrastructure, which is very large. So I would now like to welcome Michael Miertel to give his talk on the 𝐸𝐵 research infrastructure. Michael, you're welcome.
Hello, can you hear me well? Yeah.
Yes.
And hello to all the colleagues I met previously. Specifically, hello to Veronika Gaube from BOKU, because parts of what I'm saying are actually her field of expertise rather than mine. Can you see my screen? Okay, and now
Yes.
it should be shared, correct?
Perfect.
Okay. So first, pronunciation, it's 𝐸𝐵. Because if we say 𝐸𝐵, it would imply an infrastructure focusing on data. So it's the 𝐸𝐵, the Integrated European Long-Term Ecosystem, Critical Zone, and Socio-ecological Research Infrastructure. And what you can see here is that this is an integrated effort of several research communities and more to come, because 𝐸𝐵 wants to serve with its sites that are ecosystem research sites in the long-term multiple communities. That's one of our key purposes. In terms of the European scale coverage of the endeavor, we have 26 𝐸𝐵 Europe member networks. 21 of those support politically the establishment of the 𝐸𝐵 research infrastructures, and we have our scientific charter signed by more than 165 institutions from 28 countries. So that's it in very brief in numbers. But now to the core of what 𝐸𝐵 wants to achieve. 𝐸𝐵 wants to encourage, and that's also our key criterion for sites to join, whole system approach research of entire ecosystems, where the activities focus both in terms of observation and research on all the important spheres of any ecosystem, from the geosphere and pedosphere up to the lower atmosphere. And you will see here, thinking about agroecological transitions, this comprises the social and economic sphere. To that end, we have a hierarchy of site categories, no detail here, but the hierarchy basically implies a hierarchy of the level of instrumentation and, of course, the induced costs. The long-term operation of about 200 of these sites belongs to the core of the services to which we provide physical access to these sites. But a very important aspect, talking about integrated cross-disciplinary research, is the establishment of information clusters. So besides from what 𝐸𝐵 measures, we draw from various other sources and put all kind of information that's relevant for a given site into a simple to access repository, so people did not need to search themselves individually for the data sources and the data. That's it in very brief about the core intention. There are two pillars of this infrastructure. To the right, you see the distributed physical network. So just like ANAI, we are distributed in situ network of facilities, and to the left, the area of services that will all be provided through a single access point, the service portal, also the access to the distributed physical network. Two kinds of facilities here: 𝐸𝐵 sites focusing on natural scientific research, where the key role is to observe and to disentangle the effects of disturbances, so fast change and slow onset processes, slow long-term trends in the evolution of an ecosystem and the provisioning of its services. And more importantly, I think for the agroecology, or evenly important, LTSCR platforms dealing with socio-ecology at a regional scale. So it was Taru's choice to dedicate only to one of them one slide. We have a regional approach in these LTSCR platforms, so they act at the landscape level, and there should also be a combined in-depth research on the dominating habitat types in the given landscape. These are the sites, and the characteristics and targets are being cross-disciplinary, cross-sector, including a stakeholder collaboration, producing relevant knowledge for decision making, and do research on actually the implementation of the Green Deal to achieve just transitions. And of course, that also touches upon agroecological transitions. So it's this loop between the information demand and the production of knowledge in never-ending cycles indicated to the left in the bottom here. A key backbone of 𝐸LTA to achieve a whole system approach at the site level is a set of mandatory variables that have to be measured across the spheres. So at all the spheres you have to measure something, and across the spheres we touch upon the key structures and processes, the abiotic ones, the biotic structures, but then all the fluxes and processes related to energy, water, and metafluxes. Depending on the habitat, 30 to 40 of these observation variables apply for a given site. And of course, the choice was also done to be sensitive for environmental change and have a high value for the most frequently used ecosystem models. Just to give you one taste how this looks like, if you want to know about nitrogen fluxes across the system, it's indicated in the same color of the stack of the spheres. So you see just an example for the nitrogen, the kind of standard observations that would enable a team not only to judge for one side the nitrogen fluxes across the system, but as these measurements are mandatory across the 200 sites, there could be comparisons across the sites, and that includes again agriculturally relevant variables. The network based on empirical evidence, so we had 3 screenings of the emerging network, where 200 sites roughly responded from 21 countries, so they want to become part of the infrastructure. We have all the metadata. In terms of agricultural systems, vegetated man-made habitats are of course underrepresented in comparison to the share of that UNIS habitat type at the European scale. But the ministries have given us the mandate to expand the physical network to have a better coverage of agroecosystems, other than for urban systems where they said, give it a stop and focus first on other habitat types. And now a final rush, very briefly on the thematic service areas, a wide range of services. I will not touch upon the details, but show you just one example. We have the cyber infrastructure components, and one many of you might know, the 𝐸LTA site registration system, the SDR, which is currently already used on a global level. So we have 2,000 observations research sites documented here, and many more than actually the 𝐸LTA, so it's quite popular. And there you can search with all kinds of filters for observation and research sites. And of course, you can put a filter on agricultural research, and then you get metadata of the site. And it's an API available, so you can retrieve any kind of information on the standard observations, the shapefile, etc., for any of the sites that are documented in www.dames.org. I leave it there with a final slide because that's the boring bit, and I'm really grateful for Säde. I don't need to expand on that. She explained what an ERIC is. So that's the legal entity we have chosen to go for. There is a time plan where the current target is to, by 26, have this legal entity, the ERIC, established. It has a central building block, the central services with the topic centers, and of course, the contributing 21 countries currently as a distributed investment by the member countries. The relevance and options for and from agroecology. So we think that a common observation framework is a value in itself. It's through standardization enabling interoperability. We are super happy to have Taru as the convener of the agroecology expert group in 𝐸LTA. And so this group has a say in developing the physical network design, but also the services further. Securing operations of long-term agroecological research sites is surely one of the impacts we can offer, because The nomination is ongoing. You can nominate now through your country representation to be part of the 𝐸LT research infrastructure, and that will bring you into rather 5 to 10 years funding cycles than annual ones. And as Veronica is here, we think that these LTSR platforms are by definition the kind of living labs I have heard about from the agroecology conceptual framework. Next steps. I think that we should see what a potential role could be in this European network for agroecology living labs. The question is, what are the criteria? What is the format? What is the sustainability? And we are sustainable. That's the goal. That's the purpose of the ERIC, that this network will last for decades. Then again, concerning TARU, we might be able to like semi-formalize this bridge via TARU and the agroecology expert group in 𝐸LT that should be discussed. And then looking at Säde and the colleagues from ANAI, I think we should check if and how the services offered by 𝐸LT, we are emerging, we are not in ERIC yet, but how they could be shown in the service portal. And we might be able to do that in the 𝐼RISK project, which is parallel and where we could do that smartly without creating yet another structure. And that's it. That's the credo. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that's in the spirit of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now we have got a very good insight into 𝐸LT as well. Hope it came right now. Would you have some questions to Michael directly? We will then also in a couple of minutes open questions for both, but if you have questions directly for Michael, so please go ahead. Ivana, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Taru. Thank you, Michael. I was again very impressed because it's new things for me, both from Säde and from you. Very interesting final part on agroecology expert group in 𝐸LTers. Any practical understanding how this group works? What are the tasks? Has it already been functioning, or is just a newly functioned body? I understand that Taru is chairing the group, or so from both of you, if now or later during the question and answer session we could have some more insights, I would be very happy. Thank you.
Michael, do you want to answer that, or?
Well, the expert groups were intentionally established as a voice of the communities, plural. So we provided the platform, and then several of these groups self-organized. So the most active ones are those in freshwater research, agroecology. There is one in mountain research. And it really depends on the initiative. We have terms of reference, but they are very fundamental. Just clarifying, there is a convener who has to be from outside 𝐸LT. That's the purpose. And there is a co-convener from within 𝐸LT who accompanies, because we need that bridge between like the formal process and the outside expertise. But besides from that, it's really entirely up to the group to self-organize. In principle, these groups are invited to comment, are invited to provide input to the conceptual work, to the standard observations, etc., etc., etc. The outcome of that consultation, of course, in the end, goes to the tables of the ministries. Establishing an ERIC means that the ministry representatives of the participating countries in the end decide. So if I say we have 64 standard observations, the ministries have agreed that the sites they are funding have to measure them. And that's a headache for the infrastructures, the ERICs. And at the same side, you can imagine that that's a very, very good thing, because otherwise you have to struggle in isolation, and many things you suggest are considered just your own inventions. In the ERICS, this is not the case. We are talking about long-term applied standards here and long-term funded standards.
And Michael, if I can ask, then ministries receiving the feedback from the group, what do they do with that information?
The mechanism is such that we have expert groups that provide the papers for the ministries, and Taru's group feeds into that expert group, which then prepares the suggestions to the ministries. So that's the pathway. It's not that the expert groups directly approach the ministries. There is an interfacing mechanism for that.
Thank you.
And this body, you might hear about the body, that's the sacred interim councils of the infrastructures, which then become the general assemblies once these infrastructures are formally established.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we can move forward to Erika Angarita.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Michael, also for the presentation. I have a quick question about the type of indicators or the type of blocks that you present. Mostly looks very ecological approach, like climate and soil and so on. But I was wondering if you also include some socio indicators. So the social part, I'm missing it a little bit. The question is, facing this ELTA and the concept, you are also including this type of approach and indicators. And because I just take a look on the website and I mostly see technical approaches. So if it's also consider the social approach in this platform and these services.
Yes, the answer is a strict yes. And as this is a novel invention to have these socio-ecological research platforms, it lasted 2 years to agree on a set of about 24 variables in the area of socioeconomy. And in my example, I showed you that, for example, yield and fertilizer usage belongs to these variables. But there is a wide range also of demographic variables like population dynamics, land cover, etc. So the most important variables you need to do socio-ecological research at the regional scale are incorporated. And I think that the socio-ecological, the socio-economic variables have the biggest share in the cake, even. And this is very controversial because you can imagine that it's a huge effort to do, for example, in situ data gathering on these variables yourself. And we have now a two-staged approach where the first step is to retrieve information from any given available source, like official statistics, like remote sensing, data-based information. And only if you are like the beta category of a LTSCR platform, you are forced to do the data gathering in situ beyond what's available in other archives and sources. And it's been an extremely tough discussion. I think that Veronika is still here, Veronika Gaube. She was heavily involved in the core of this process. And if you are interested in how that went and how complex it was, Veronika Gaube is the right person to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then we will take one more question before we open up the discussion for both speakers. Thorsten, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you. I'm Thorsten Berg from Aarhus University, Department of Agroecology. And this is for Michael. Thank you very much for enlightening us on ELTA. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on when we consider that the model, the conceptual model that Virkki showed us, where it was quite evident that that co-creation is a central device in the engine room of agroecology transition. And what would be your thoughts on how you, as a massive research infrastructure, would somehow engage with that, with co-creation? I mean, there's obviously the sharing part, there's knowledge sharing in what ELTA stands for, but the actual dynamics of co-creation, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we could have a workshop on that.
I think we should.
No, first aspect, data. We create fair data, and I think the biggest asset of 𝐸LTE for now that it's largely based on sites that have been operating or in operation for 20 years plus, up to 100 years. So like making these legacy data available with some core metadata is a first step, and then the standard observations, fair data, seamlessly accessible. That's like the input path for creating the knowledge. A second angle from my perspective is co-creation of the virtual labs. And this is where the magic term is co-location, and we have continuously been monitoring and screening with which other infrastructures we could use the same sites without disturbing each other. That, for example, involves ICOS, ANAI, also the ICPs of the UNEC Working Group on Effect. And for example, with ANAI, there has been a continuous dialogue about how to merge the observational approach with the experimental approach. So co-creation of the best possible virtual labs. I think then very practically speaking, all kinds of metadata, controlled vocabularies and ontologies. So I think that first step, knowing what's out there at all, and that's why the Danes has been quite successful far beyond 𝐸LTE, because you can click and filter and you get all kinds of overlaps between 𝐸LTE and other arrays, or other arrays leaving 𝐸LTE out of the story. And then there is a long list, I think, where we needed to sit together and maybe like prioritize the kind of activities that have the highest likelihood of success. But I think we are currently not suffering from opportunities. I think that many arrays, given the scarcity of resources, lack from focus. Like, what is the easiest win? And what is the important win we have to make, even though it might not be easy, but we have to strive for because it's simply needed from a scientific perspective, from an infrastructural perspective. So these four aspects for an answer that could last forever. Sorry about that.
No, thank you very much. The discussion is very welcome. These conversations are there exactly for the purpose of letting everybody the chance to ask questions and open up new discussions. So all questions are very, very welcome. I would now like to open the floor again for both speakers, either to comment on the questions or to get more questions. So please remember you can also ask questions from Säde. From the chat, we have also had a couple of questions. There has been a discussion about the AgroServe project and how it's connecting different research infrastructures. Would Daniel Baldo want to comment on the question from 𝐷𝐸𝐿TE? 𝐷𝐸𝐿TE was looking for one particularly good project that has been using the infrastructures systematically. And I wonder if AgroServe wants to highlight a project or the process, how AgroServe is selecting projects.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you both for the presentations, actually. Very informative and I believe helpful for everyone. No, I can just reiterate my message. AgroServe is a project which runs until 2027. And for the moment, we don't have actually research projects that are completed, but we have successfully completed our first call for research projects, and we have a second one which is closing at the end of the month, and we will have many more until 2027. But again, it's a project that might be considered for anyone interested in doing research, because we offer a big catalog of services. So, of course, as it's been said before as well, I believe that this kind of project can very well collaborate also with other research infrastructures that are not part of the consortium that we established. But I think it's very important to share knowledge and cross paths with everyone that is trying to work in the field of agroecology. So yeah, and of course we are more than happy to contribute also in the agroecology partnership goals and mission.
Thank you very much, Daniele. Luis, was this answering your question, or did you want to ask something more? Dear Luis. Okay. Then we have a comment in the chat from 𝐵𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐻𝐿 is asking about the 𝐅𝐸𝐻 infrastructure. I have seen that Michael is already answering it in the comments. 𝐵𝐸𝐻, would you still like to ask something extra from Michael?
Yeah, so I am Jean Ballet, so I'm together with 𝐵𝐸𝐻 in the same room. This is why I write under his name. Thank you for these two very interesting presentations, Säde and Michael. Just one additional question, because thank you for your answer, Michael, was related to the fact that on the sites that you're monitoring, you have people who modulate practices to test practices that can lead to agroecological transition or not? This was my question.
Well, we have currently about 50 LT-SCR platform regions nominated. Hardly any does not have agriculture as one of the managed landscape types. And to what extent agroecological transitions have been a focus of research is still to be inquired in a comparative way. We have so far been having enough trouble to at least know what the sites have been measuring in terms of the most fundamental measurements. And you might know that from other in situ networks, it's extremely difficult to get this overview because it's all additional efforts for the sites and the platform regions to do that documentation. But I would really like to ask Veronica if she has a guess how many of the current LT-SCR platforms are interested or are even working on agroecological transitions beyond the Son Atelier in France, of which I know they all do that in a way.
Okay. Okay, this answers my question. Thank you very much, Michael.
Yes, thank you. Is Veronica still with us? Would you like to tell us a little bit more about the socioeconomical indicators and the platform work on agroecology?
I'm still here, but only for 5 minutes. As Michael mentioned, I also don't have an overview on how many platforms are involved in agroecology tasks. This is something that needs to be asked, maybe in the network. Yeah, that's Son Atelier is one of the most prominent examples where this kind of research takes place, and also these observations of transformations. But I'm not aware of any of the other LT-SCR platforms doing it. But maybe something for the future. It's something that could become more interesting.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Erika, you would have another question.
Yes, thank you. More than it's like a question and also reflection for the participants and the presenters. If I understood well, the research infrastructures are basically interdisciplinary spaces of work versus living labs, which are more transdisciplinary. And by transdisciplinary, I'm referring when you have actors from academia versus not academic, and interdisciplinary is only academic environment, but different disciplines. This is why I understood and how I see the difference between living labs and research infrastructure. I want to know, what do you think about this? And also, looking through these websites that you present today, I can also visualize that the research infrastructure are more focused in services, technological innovations, and results from research in this interdisciplinary works, jobs, or projects. And I can also now thinking in the future is that the connection with agroecology and with the living labs, for example, is like maybe these services and these technologies can be tested in the living labs or maybe connected with the living labs more in the real life conditions in the case that applies for being adapted or, I don't know, like adjusted to the local conditions. Anyways, I mean, it's not a question, it's more like an understanding. I want to know if actually I get the message clearly. And if I want to put this in a question, could be what is the difference between the research infrastructures and the living labs and the contribution to agroecology? Thank you.
Thank you. Säde, would you like to comment on this?
Probably I give the floor to Michelle if you wanted to share your better answer about it.
We can also, from the partnership point of view, we can also ask Thorsten to comment on this.
But may I comment as coordinator of AgroServe?
Of course.
Yeah, because the question was really directed to AgroServe. In fact, in AgroServe, yes, we have 11 research infrastructures which are doing interdisciplinary science, but AgroServe is also a transdisciplinary approach, and we are now installing. Well, it depends on five living labs. 3 are Mediterraneans in the Mediterranean area, in Italy, France, and in Portugal, excuse me. And 1 is in the Central Europe, in Czechia, and 1 is in Finland. So you see that, yes, we ask for projects that are either interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary. I confess that during the first call for project, we got 100 expression of interest, but none for the from farmers or etc. But during the second course, we are, and for the next course, we will favor and we will ask specifically for transdisciplinary research, because now our living labs are close to completion. So yes, we are trying to make the link between open innovation and open knowledge and interdisciplinary research.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, would you like to enlighten us how this is connected to 𝐸LTE? How do you see interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary studies as part of 𝐸LTE?
Okay, I started writing an answer to Erika specifically. When trying to understand what infrastructure means in the European terminology, we have to be aware that this endeavor was started with a large hadron collider in CERN, with space observatories, etc. And only in the second step, the concept was applied to environmental research infrastructures. And even then, in the beginning, the focus was pretty much on instrumentation. Just think of AKIS, the Integrated Carbon Observation System. In 𝐸LTE, we have seen, and I think Michelle touched upon that, a much stronger need to consider also what we in 𝐸LTE call soft infrastructure. Expertise, people, communication platforms. For us, an infrastructure, and that relates very much to what you call a living lab. An infrastructure is a lot more than the sensor. It's also the staff that provides a service, that staff that enables training on a service, spreads its usage, etc., etc., etc. And we have desperately been trying to expand the notion of infrastructure to cover what I think you call a living lab. LTSCR platforms are, to a good extent, living labs. And parts of the infrastructure component in these LTSCR platforms are soft, in terms of staff, in terms of communication, etc., etc. And we are fully aware that this implies actually a move in also the European Commission's understanding of an infrastructure. So I'm really sorry, it's not, I think it's much more complicated than you had hoped for and everyone hoped for, I think.
No, no, it's very good. I think there is a lot of definitions, and of course, discussions are also needed to understand what do we mean with these definitions. How does it relate to the existing networks? Because of course, in existing networks, words have been defined already, and then we are getting a new definition from the Commission, and we need to see how do these align. What do we mean with all the different definitions? So it's completely fine, Michael. Thank you. I also wanted to ask if Thorsten wanted to comment this from the partnership perspective, how we differentiate between living labs and research infrastructures.
Thank you, Taru. I just like Michael. This is the billion-dollar question, really. But obviously, the policy intention at the moment is that many of the research infrastructures should come to more gainful use, actually, so that more of what they stand for and more sort of play a larger role in the innovation. And in agroecology and nutrition, and the core to that is as we know currently would be this the co-creation part, which would also involve non-academics, as also we heard. How to do that is probably much more than it's a paradigmatic question. It's a question of research paradigms, I would argue, and it's about knowledge production shifts, and it's about losing control also, and it's also about it's about a lot of things that need to be much better understood, I think. And this is also one of the things that we will be doing we will try to do in the agroecology partnership, how to actually go about this whilst still there are all kinds of issues of scientific validation issues, and that are of concern to many people, and you have the dynamics of living labs and so on. How do these actually marry? That is probably the big question if we want to do what we want to do.
Thank you, Thorsten. At the moment, I see no more hands, and I see many comments that have been answered in the chat. But as a final question for both Säde and Michael, I would like to ask, since agroecological transition is dependent on quite a lot of farmers that are the stewards of the land, how do farmers become part of research infrastructures?
Well, that is a very good question. How the farmers, how to say it, like end users. So of course, research infrastructures having these trainings, and they can attend to the trainings, and of course, when researchers as a users, they are doing them research and using the research infrastructure services. So of course, then these research projects where using these research infrastructure services, the farmers can be a part of. But probably it's better to ask from the Michelle that how the elder can be providing farmers inside of the research infrastructure. So I give the floor for someone else.
Thank you, Säde. We give the question further to Michael. How do farmers become part of ELTER?
Okay, I could pass the question again to Veronica, but Veronica, intervene when I'm talking nonsense. As one of the variables, standard observation variables for a given region, there is an inquiry on the governance structure. And for the beta platforms, category 1, that's further customized. So one of the key activities is to get a good understanding who are the actors that count in a region, who has a say, who is affected by what, etc. So this means that through the work of the regional research team, working with actor groups, using methods like fuzzy cognitive mapping whatsoever to semi-quantify their relations and the directions of the impact, would in the end, and that's why I inserted the communication platform here for transdisciplinary research, establish a communication platform where spokespersons of the actor groups can involve. So that means that a farmer would not become a member of ELTA as a European scale research infrastructure, but farmers as a group, as an actor group that matters in a region, would be involved and integrated into the region scale activities of the transdisciplinary research. And what we require as a mandatory criterion from participating living labs, virtual ecosystem research platforms, is that there is a memorandum of understanding. That means that the key actors of a region, so those identified as those affected and driving, respectively, would sign a memorandum saying, we want to involve and engage in this kind of transdisciplinary research in our region. So that's a concrete answer on how a person, a farmer, could finally engage. And in 𝐸𝐨𝐬𝐭𝐞𝐫𝐢𝐧𝐠, for example, we have these structures, these administrative structures, where you find for most important actor groups spokespersons that are elected, that are associations, with different kinds of mandating of these people that then speak for a group.
Thank you, Michael. That was a very nice practical example of how this could happen. And I see that the discussion is continuing in the chat. We are now coming to 2 o'clock. It's been really, really great to see your active participation. Thank you so much for Säde and Michael for these great talks. And thank you for all that have been participating. And thank you for all these great questions and answers. We will meet again in a month. So on the 30th of October, we will have the next conversation. If you want to contribute in what you would like to hear, what kind of themes, topics you would like to see lifted in these conversations, please do not hesitate to send me an email. I would be very happy to receive your ideas so that we could discuss them in the task group. And if you are not yet on the email list of these conversations, also please do let us know and we will add you to the invitation list. But for now, I would like to say thank you and wish you a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Taru, for organizing. Thanks for the good questions. This was really inspiring. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.